Hello everyone. Let me greet you with the traditional Chechen greeting, Mashdor, wishing freedom to all. Today I would like to talk about a false concept that has been artificially created. I want to clarify the term Russia, about the confusion that this name creates. The fact is, Russians are an ethnicity. In Russia, there is an ethnic group called Russians who have their own culture and language, and they are the state-forming titular nation. In Russian, this is pronounced as Ruski. But there is also citizenship, the citizenship of the Russian Federation, which in Russian is pronounced as Россияnin, and the name of the Russian Federation itself in Russian is Российская Федерация. There are also dozens of other peoples in Russia who were incorporated into the Russian Empire at various times. Peoples such as the Tuvans, Chuvash, Circassians, Chechens, Ingush, and many others. Each of these peoples has its own culture, language, and national identity. For example, the culture, language, and traditions of the Chechens have absolutely nothing in common with those of the Russians. The same can be said about other nationalities as well. In the state of the Soviet Union, Russian was the official language. Education in schools and higher education institutions was conducted in this language, and all state affairs were carried out in Russian. Television, newspapers, books. Basically, absolutely everything existed in Russian. Chechens, and I will draw a parallel with them based on my own experience, since I am Chechen myself, did not have the opportunity to speak their native language in public places in the Soviet Union. In the capital of the Chechen Republic, Grozny, which was part of the Soviet Union, I personally remember as a 6-year-old boy witnessing a moment on public transport when two older Chechens were speaking their native language, and the entire bus erupted in protest. The Russian citizens, who made up the majority in the capital of the Chechen Republic, Grozny, and were riding that bus, all turned against these two guys as one. Both women and men spoke very harshly, saying things like the guys should speak a human language. In the end, two guys were forced off the bus. Of course, at home, our parents taught us to speak our native language. However, things were different in public places. And only closer to the Soviet Union collapse at the end of the 80s did Chechens get the opportunity to have 1 or 2 hours a week of lessons in their own Chechen language. This lesson was treated like a foreign language class. On the one hand, I find it funny, but on the other, it's painfully unpleasant when I often see in the media how Russians complain to the whole world that, supposedly, in Ukraine, Russians are forbidden to have an education system in the Russian language, and the whole world starts looking at Ukraine with disapproval. Today, in the Chechen Republic of Ishkeria, which is occupied by the Russians, the entire education system, mass media, television, newspapers, official paperwork in the Republic, books, and everything else exist in Russian. And in exactly the same way, their native Chechen language is taught in schools for just a couple of hours a week, like a foreign language. But another problem has emerged. Instead of their native language, Chechens are being encouraged to learn Arabic, which, just like Russian, is foreign to Chechens and has nothing in common with their language. But let's return to the term Rossiyanin, Russian citizen. For the peoples who are part of the Russian Federation, whether by force or by choice, things look very different from the inside. For them, Russians as a citizen of the state sounds like Rossiyanin, and Russians as an ethnic identity sounds like Ruski to them. But to the outside world, both terms sound like Russians. This creates the impression that it is a single ethnic group. However, that's not the case. For example, if we take the Chechens, for us, as well as for the outside world, Russians are associated with vodka, bears, promiscuous women, balalaikas, and similar attributes. Oh, I almost forgot. Of course, there are also differences, because for us, they are also very cruel and unpredictable people. I'm not talking about individuals right now, but rather about the general perception of them as an ethnic group. Unfortunately, there is also a certain opinion about Chechens as people who are Islamists. This opinion has been artificially formed over the past more than 20 years. Islamic ideologies fundamentally contradict Chechen identity. and the people who spread these ideologies within the Chechen community were engaged in distorting concepts. This was done through total lies. Today, we are conducting informational work, trying to explain to our society all the contradictions with our culture and ideologies, and how in our society values are gradually being replaced. Because of this, we have become the target of threats coming from official Russian sources, both from mass propaganda and from Islamists who are artificially created. Unfortunately, in European countries, instead of actively combating Islamism, they prefer to fight Chechens as a whole, as a nation. This is evident. For instance, when an Islamist commits a crime, his Chechen nationality is published in huge letters on newspaper headlines, and this is broadcast by all types of mass media, while officially a Chechen is a Russian citizen by nationality. The bias of such behavior is obvious to us Chechens, even at first glance. This is a very dangerous trend. Last time I was criticized for the video being too long, so today I'll wrap things up and we'll meet again in the next broadcast. I want to wish everyone to remain free. Mash oil. Goodbye to everyone.